Yeah, what up? It's Base Boxing Basement Triple B. Hit the like at least. It's free. So, yeah, I didn't stay up. I was going to do a live, but then I realized it was 2 a.m. UK time for Anthony Yarde vs. David Benavidez. So I went to sleep at 9, weirdly, but I woke up this morning and watched a replay. And I had predicted that Benavidez would win late. I thought round 7 to 12 was a decent bet. I didn't even put it on. I didn't see much value in this whole card on betting. And Anthony Yarde is very muscular, man. He looks like a bodybuilder, man. He has huge shoulders, massive breastises, But, as opposed to that, if you saw them, Benavidez, looks flabby. He was a fat kid. There's videos of him looking fat as a youngster. And, he got the body of like an aging journeyman, that kind of soft body with slightly flabby hips. But, you know what they say. It's not a bodybuilding contest, it's boxing. Yeah, but athleticism matters. Being in great shape matters. It does always look good when a boxer's ripped, but I thought Yarde looked too muscular, too big, massive shoulders, big breastises. Benavidez, who I've underrated in the past, he's like he's got the body of an aging journeyman. As I said, like soft with kind of flabby hips. But this guy's good. I'd underrate him. He's unbeaten in the amateurs and the pros. 15-0, allegedly, in the amateurs. And now, going into this fight, he was 30 unbeaten fights, I think. And he was a fat kid, so, he's done well. So no wonder his body's a bit flabby. He likes the yayo too. He failed a test for yayo at some point. The first couple of rounds, to me, David Benavidez was winning them. The commentary were getting a bit excited about Yarde, going, I think he's got the bigger power. And I'm like, he's more muscular, but the more spiteful, vicious shots are coming from David Benavidez. It's not a bodybuilding contest, as they repeat over and over again. And by round 3, I thought Anthony Yarde was starting to mark up. He's starting to mark up. His eyes were looking just a little marked. Benavidez seemed to be aiming for his eyes, and it was a good job. By round 4, Anthony Yarde was blinking a lot, and the biased commentary kept on trying to talk him up, I thought he's getting taken to pieces. Benavidez is very accurate. And a good work rate. Yeah, Yarde was a bit crude, and he's way slower than Benavidez. Like I said, too muscled. End of round 4, Benavidez landed a nice combination. He had one hand grabbed by Yarde and then kept on punching him again and again and again with uppercuts, and he continued to hit Anthony Yarde in the eyes, and was marking them up. At round 6, Benavidez at the beginning looked like he'd been hurt a bit by Yarde. He stood back a bit. He took a couple of shots. Yarde's corner probably got excited. Tunde was probably yelling, "Lions in the camp." But after that early session, Benavidez took over, and Yarde's nose started to bleed badly, and it was bothering him. His eyes were swelling up. And by the end of the 6th round, Benavidez was hurting Yarde a lot. He was hurting him a lot. He was looking battered, getting broken down by Benavidez's superior accuracy, speed, and probably punching power. They were going on about how Yarde was the better puncher, but as I said in my preview, Yarde has never beaten a world-class opponent. Yeah, he's got a lot of knockouts. But his best wins are at British level at best. He's gutsy. He's tough. He gives it his all, but he's looking battered at the end of round 6. And I thought, well, the end is coming soon. And round 7, Benavidez puts Anthony Yarde down and hits him when he's on the floor lightly. And the referee take a point away from Benavidez. But, even at this point, you just think it's not going to make much difference. This ain't going no distance. This fight is not going the distance. Yeah. And sure enough, when the fight restarted, well, I've always said Anthony Yarde has got heart, and I said this in my preview. Anthony Yarde has got heart. He will always come back. He will always try, but he's never scored a world-class win. And whenever he's stepped up to world-class, he has shown his courage, his willingness to fight, but generally he gets beaten. He got stopped by Kovalev. He gets stopped by Beterbiev, and even got stopped up to a British level. So, I always thought a classy guy like Benavidez, a seriously world-class pound-for-pound fighter like Benavidez is going to be way too much for Yarde, and he was. And eventually the ref stepped in and stopped the fight with Yarde hurt. His face was all bashed up. Even the doctor was called at the beginning of round 7 to have a look at his face. It was quite clear that there wasn't long. Yarde went out on his shield, but he always does. I've got to give Yarde credit. I can't stand his trainer, Tunde, that bum, lions in the camp. But Anthony Yarde always shows heart and will to win. He's too muscular, in my opinion. He looked more muscular than ever, I think it slows him down. It tires him. I think a certain amount of muscularity in boxing is good, but too much, and you get heavy, you get slow. I mean, he did look bigger than ever as well, which makes me a bit suspicious on the PED tip. But of course, he's never failed a test, as Otto Wallin would say. But he was stopped. He went out on his shield, but Benavidez looked great. And it's funny to me because when he weighs in, he just doesn't look that good. He looks slightly fleshy. Like I said, he's got some flab around his hips. But no wonder Canelo avoided Benavidez. Or they got beat anyway by Crawford. But, I think Canelo's a bit short. And he was never as good as people said. He was very well managed. He was very well promoted. And he could fight. But I always thought he was overrated, Canelo. So no wonder Canelo avoided Benavidez. And now Benavidez charges on. He charges on. And what fights are there for David Benavidez? Well, Benavidez is now unbeaten in 31 pro fights with 25 KOs. That's a great knockout ratio, 80% around there. He was allegedly 15-0 as an amateur, although he turned pro in 2013. Imagine that. Age 18, I think, which is nuts, man. But, he obviously knew the pros is for me. He's now 28. He's logged some great wins recently. If you look, the last guys he's beaten, David Lemieux KO'd, Caleb Plant, he won decision, Demetrius Andrade KO'd, Alexander Govodchik, tough fight, points, David Morrell, who's a slippery good fighter, points, and now KO'd Anthony Yarde in 7. It's going to be interesting. They push him a lot. The Mexican monster, allegedly. Yeah, which I think is weird because he's actually American in nationality, Mexican-American. But then his mother's from Ecuador, so he's Mexican-Ecuadorian-American in reality. But obviously, the Mexican market, especially the pay-per-view market, is big. So they want a Mexican superstar, especially at the higher weights. And they've got one. Who's next? Well, let's look at the light heavyweight rankings. Obviously, the Don, the king, is Dimitri Bivol. That's a tough fight. It'd be a great fight, Bivol has not really been hurt. He's an extremely talented boxer. He has power, even though he does never seem to go for the stoppage. There's Artur Beterbiev. Well, he's getting a bit old now. He's 40. But that still would be an interesting fight. I'd have Benavidez winning against Beterbiev. Against Bivol, that's 50-50. To me, that's 50-50, but I've underrated Benavidez throughout his career. So, who knows? His work rate might overcome Bivol's skill. And below that, you got guys like Callum Smith, Buatsi. I mean, there's nothing really below that. Could he move up to cruiserweight? There's a possibility. There's a super fight there against Gilberto Ramirez, who's the other Mexican superstar. That's a possibility. Looking at Benavidez's body, he would have to alter his training a bit because he looks flabby at 175, let alone at 200 pounds. Opataya, I would keep him away from Opataya. I would keep anyone away from Jai Opataya, to be honest with you. And no one seems to want to fight him. But I believe the fight for him will be Bivol. And they'll probably do it in Saudi. And that's a big, big fight, an even fight, and a pound-for-pound fight. So let's see what happens.